module covers the following topics. Notes on the transportation of all microwave goods including antennas, network elements, cables, drums, and packages. Some general guidelines for transporting microwave goods. Equipment inspection. Receiving equipment on site. Bill of materials document. Let's begin. When dealing with transportation of microwave goods, one needs to consider the application of the following sets of rules. The rules for packaging and stacking the various system components, antennas, network elements, cable, drums, or other accessories. The rules for safe transportation of the above-mentioned equipment. The rules for unpacking the received goods and storing them on site or in warehouses, short-term or long-term storage. Being authorized by Ceragon to receive equipment into a warehouse, site, or other designated location means these criteria will always apply. All equipment must be received in the correct quantities. All equipment must be received on-site in factory-shipped condition. If any of the previous conditions are not fulfilled, then you have an obligation to inform those responsible to clarify and replace any missing or damaged items. You might also need to prepare insurance claim forms to recover the cost of missing or damaged goods. Whenever transporting goods to or from a site, there are some considerations to be taken into account, no matter what the goods transported are. On the road, please use moderate speeds that suit the road conditions. Of course, road rules always apply. If you are supervising a team for transportation, instruct them in the same way. Always try to keep the load to be transported under the maximum load permitted by the law and permitted for that vehicle. Periodically, across the way, the transport team should inspect the carried goods through the rearview mirror. When moving though rough roads, try to stop at regular intervals, inspect the load and readjust the cargo strapping if needed. All equipment is to be handled with care, always. If there is damage observed to the equipment, that equipment will need be replaced. Equipment that has suffered any kind of damage should never be installed on site, because damaged equipment will not operate or perform as planned. The equipment at hand will, most likely, need to be replaced in another installation, which will actually increase the time, efforts, and cost to the whole operation. Therefore, it is much better to have it right first time around. Equipment that needs replacement can have higher cost, involves delays, doubles the distance traveled and transport costs as well doubles the installation time. Let us say it again, all equipment should be handled with care, always. Whenever transporting telecommunication goods, always observe and follow the storage and transportation instructions marked on transported crates or packaging. You can observe in our examples some of these markings. The cargo straps are to be used onto the strongest part of the crate, like in our example, most likely marked on the packaging. Regularly, the load is to be observed and make sure that it has remained securely strapped, as previously mentioned. When moving on poorer road conditions, position the antenna crates and more fragile packages where they will be least likely to be affected by vibration and shocks from the road. You can then load in the remaining space of your cargo, the more robust equipment and accessories packages. First off, there is a wrong way of moving a large antenna. Let's observe and learn from this exemplified scenario. When using a forklift truck, always ensure the fork's length will extend to reach the full depth of the crate or load being lifted. Failure to do so may cause the load to overturn or even fall, thus damaging the base of the crate and its contents. As you can imagine, this is not a proper start for any installation project. Smaller antennas are easier to move and store, but the large crates often cause most issues. Secondly, let's have a look at the right way of moving a large antenna. When moving large antenna crates or similar loads, always fit fork extensions to the forklift truck. Extensions to the forks should reach the whole of the antenna crate. Please observe the scenario in this slide for the use of extensions. The load should be kept near to the ground so that even in the event of a fall down, the damage is limited and the fall does not affect the people around. The driver of the forklift truck should drive carefully, making sure that the forklift does not become unstable at any point during the movement. If there are signs of the load becoming unstable, please stop and readjust the straps and grip. By following these recommendations, the load will be handled safely and, thus, receive approval from supervisor. During forklift operation, please remember that vision can be obstructed by the carried cargo, so extra attention is needed moving forward or lateral, especially keeping in mind not to hit a person when the vision angle is obstructed. When dealing with microwave devices or smaller antennas, particularly those packaged inside carton boxes, always store them indoors and stacked on timber pallets. We recommend that microwave devices and smaller antennas should be stored indoors and kept dry at all times. When storing large antennas, the timber pieces from antenna crates are not suitable for long-term storage. Instead, use more durable material that can resist humidity. When antennas are stored outside, make sure to raise the crate off the ground using concrete blocks and then cover the package with waterproof sheeting, all the way down to the ground. It is preferable to store the antennas indoors, under dry conditions, if possible. In any case, the crate should still be raised off the ground with raising blocks immune to humidity. If you need to store a large antenna on site, place the antenna on level ground with the proper raising blocks and make sure that it remains with the right side up. Look for and follow the sign on the package that means, this side up. Do another inspection of goods before loading and dispatching, so that you can check for the following. For the antennas that have been stored outside, always inspect the crate before hoisting, because termites and moisture can destroy timber crates or create damage that is hardly observable. Such a damaged crate can fall during hoisting. Please remember, damaged goods should be reported, not transported. Another warning and recommendation for the moment of hoisting: never sling the crate from the top. Make sure the straps for hoisting are placed on undamaged material. When hoisting a large antenna, please keep in mind to use only good quality slings, and the slings to be used have been inspected before strapping and hoisting. Always attach slings at each of the four corners of the pallet base. Do not attach slings to the crate timbers. The crate is not designed to support hoisting the inside load, just to transport it. At all times, be observant of the load lifted. Ask another person to be observer for the hoisting procedure and make sure you communicate any issues, turbulences, violent movements, or cracking sounds when raising. Don't take chances with the hoisted loads and never stand under loads. Remember that even if almost all the scenarios are thought as taken into consideration, accidents can still happen from small mistakes. Remembering that no microwave systems or components should ever come in contact with the ground, from time of arrival on site until installed onto the tower, there should always be some protection underneath it. During the unpacking and assembly of the antenna package, remember that you also need to protect the equipment. You can do that by, at all times, place protection under the equipment when unpacking crates on site. Please note the antenna components from the animation you see in front of you. The antenna is comprised of the main reflector surface along with the pole attachment structure, the radome reinforcement, and the side struts that fix it in place on the tower. Working with steel components imposes a number of considerations as well. A phenomenon called surface contamination will likely result if metal components are placed directly onto the ground, because of the ground's humidity. Surface contamination will eventually lead to surface corrosion, which will affect the endurance and lifetime of the component. Accelerate depletion of the zinc galvanized coating system, reducing its protective life possibly by many years. Bring about premature failure of the paint coating where this is applied directly onto a contaminated surface. To avoid these unwanted problems, you should use timber battens, a minimum 100 by 100 millimeters, to raise steelwork off of the ground. Especially for heavy items, resistant battens are preferable to the wood pallets. Leave enough space between heavy steel bundles to simplify the slinging process. For pipe sections, use timber wedges, like shown here, to prevent them rolling off the batten or pallets. As for the rest of the equipment, including racks, transport them with care. When transporting equipment, provide adequate protection to prevent any damage. Follow this example for guidance on how to securely strap the load to avoid any damage to the packing cases during transportation and loading. You should also keep in mind the following. When additional rack is transported, strap down equipment rack separately, not stacked together. Use corner protections made out of very thick carton or plastic for strapping the timber crate down before movement. Protect with a tarp or water and dust-proof cover before transportation. Another consideration is to be given to the cargo placement on the transport truck. On poorer road conditions, please adjust the position of the load so that it minimizes the vibrations or shocks applied to the equipment. Be aware of the packing case contents. Transport and handle with care and use moderate speeds in relationship with the road's difficulty. Let's talk about equipment inspection and how to inspect the rigging equipment. The installation team is responsible for conducting regular checks on their equipment and should be fully trained to recognize unacceptable wear or damage to the used equipment. The installation team should consider these aspects in an equipment inspection. The winch should be serviced and maintained at planned regular intervals. The winch cable, usually made out of steel, should be checked for any signs of fraying, cuts, and kinking. Check the wear of the eyelets and cable clamps. Ensure the cable is always wound correctly onto the winch's drum. The rope, which is usually made of fibers, should be checked for fraying, cuts, and contamination from oil or grease or dirt buildup and grit inside strands. These can cause internal fiber wear. The shackles should be checked for pin and bow wear, thread damage, or distortion of the bow. The pulley block should be lubricated if required, checked for wear to the groove, looseness of the pins, and wear or damage of the pulley groove. Please check before hoisting that the cable or rope is compatible with the groove size. The slings, please check for cuts, fraying, and/or any signs of contamination. Ceragon can and will reject any item of equipment and have it removed from the site if considered unsuitable or unsafe for its intended use. The working load limit concept. There is a number of interchangeable terms are used in the industry: working load limit, safe working load, rated capacity, rated load value, and possibly others, but they all mean the same thing. The working load limit is the maximum load that should ever be applied to, or lifted with, the rigging equipment. It is important that all hoisting and lifting equipment has a known rating to ensure they are capable of safely supporting the loads that will be hoisted. Having said that, remember, the working load limit must never ever be exceeded. This refers to all of the involved equipment. If the rating is unknown, it will be rejected by Ceragon and must be removed from installation site immediately, before anyone has a chance to use it. Most times, the installation team will receive the goods in a site from a transport team. Once the goods have safely reached the site, please accept responsibility for. The team receiving the equipment is responsible for the equipment. To fulfill this role, please take into account the following considerations and recommendations. Always check the list of equipment to ensure that the correct items and their correct quantities. This list is to be compared against the bill of material for that site. Always check all the equipment right on arrival. Avoid the situation where you find damage later on. Any type of unreported damage can create problems later. If some equipment is found damaged, please never install on site. The correct action is to report any observed damage to the supervisor or the Ceragon representative for the site. Any missing items or quantities are to also be reported immediately, and not complying with this rule can obstruct or delay the installation project. Check and inspect these mentioned items during the receiving of the equipment, not later, because if the transport team has left the premises, this will add other delays. This module has covered the following topics: transportation of all micro